in a series, we're studying the book of Hebrews. And so Hebrews has 13 chapters. We're at the 12th chapter. So what that means is this is the next to last week. So if you've gone to a movie, you've walked into the movie and there's like 15 minutes left in the movie. I understand that, but you'll be able to catch up. It's not that big of a deal. You'll be able to catch up and get it on the context. I'll try my best to bridge you in on that. But chapter 13, if you look at it, chapter 13 is uber practical, like super practical. And most of the book isn't. Most of the book is theological. It's talking about who God is, who Jesus is, what He's done for us. But chapter 13, we'll talk about next week, is super practical. It'll talk about entertaining strangers. It'll talk about your marriage. Talk about how you treat the people that you know. It's like a long list, longer than what I can mention now. But chapter 12 is not that practical. It's almost what's been called a rhetorical climax. A rhetorical climax is when everything comes together. It's if you're watching a movie, it's the cymbals being hit and the drums being hit, and this music's coming to a head, and everything in the movie is coming together. Something is about to happen. It's the same thing with this author. Everything, all of his illustrations are coming together, and he's bringing it to a head. It's like the finale of a fireworks show. If you've been to a fireworks show, either at the Astro game or 4th of July, you know at the very end, it's all about to let loose. This is going to be the big finale. Well, this is kind of like the big finale. And this is not a letter. Paul's letters were written with, I, Paul, write to you, and grace and peace. That's a letter. That's a salutation. This is more like a sermon. And if we looked at the rhetorical climax as a sermon, it would be when the pastor gets animated, gets a little more excited, the voice gets a little bit louder. Maybe someone's on the keys, building up the emotion. God, and he begins to talk, using music to help with the emotions. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's the climax. And what he's wanting to get to is he's wanting to say, this is how you can live an unshakable life in a world that's going to shake you. This is how you can remain rock solid in an uncertain world, in an ever-changing world, in a world in which you can't predict. I mean, we know up until this point that these people, the Hebrews that he's writing to, they're being tested. They're experiencing, we could say, almost like a sort of a meltdown. They're getting some pressure put in. We know from the author's admonition, they're thinking about possibly going back to the old way. And he's instructing them, this is how you stand rock solid without melting down. Now, that's where we have to start. That's where you always have to start in Bible study. You can't just jump to application, like open up the book, the Bible and say, how am I going to apply this? You really need to know the context in which it's written in, which means the author, the people he's writing to, why is he writing, so that you can be true to the meaning. But we can't leave it 2,000 years there, because then how does that help you be a better person now? How does that help you be a godly person now? So we got to be Bob the Builder, right? We got to build a bridge. And we build a bridge from there to now and say, in 2024, what does it mean for me to be unshakable in a world that's uncertain? Or when life isn't so predictable? What does it look like for me to not melt down on Tuesday? Or when I get the news, or whenever something that I don't want to happen happens? How can I not be driven by fear? How can I hold up under the pressures to perform, the expectations of whoever, family, of work? How do I not let the terrible of life not destroy me? What do I do when I'm not good enough? When my best is not good enough? And we all know that that's a reality, that I give my best and my best's just not good enough. There's someone better. And how do I not take that and just have a total meltdown that someone else got a position or getting the attention or is living the life that I dreamed of living? So the author's going to get to a point where he's going to say, there's two mountains. Here's one mountain you don't go to. Here's the other mountain that you need to go to. Here's the text. Hang in here. It's verse 18 through 29. If you have your journals, you can look at it in your journals. If not, it'll be on the screens for you. So, for you have not come. You have not come to what may be touched, a blazing fire, a darkness and gloom and a tempest. Tempest is a storm. The sound of a trumpet and a voice whose words made the hearers beg that no further messages be spoke to them. For they could not endure the order that was given. Even if a beast touches the mountain, it shall be stoned. Indeed, so terrifying was the sight that Moses said, I tremble with fear. So if you were raised in church and you know the Old Testament, you know in Exodus that's what it's referring to, Mount Sinai, where Moses goes up, meets with God to get the law, the Ten Commandments. And he comes and he demonstrates his way in a way that gets people's attention. But the author wants this group of people to know, but you have come. So you haven't come to this mountain, but you have come to Mount Zion, to the city of the living God, heavenly Jerusalem, innumerable angels in festal, joyful gatherings, and to the assembly of the firstborn who are enrolled in heaven, and to God, the judge of all, to the spirits of the righteous made perfect. You've come to the mountain of Jesus, the mediator of the new covenant, and to sprinkled blood that speaks a better word than the blood of Abel. Again, we've mentioned many times in this series that Hebrews is the most Old Testament of all New Testament books. Has more allusions, references, character references. And you see this here. It's talking about Mount Sinai, and it talks about Abel. He says, verse 25, see that you do not refuse him who is speaking, for if they did not escape when they refused him who warned, let me go back. For if they did not escape when they refused him who warned them on earth, much less will we escape if we reject him who warns from heaven. That's an argument called from the lesser to the greater. If you didn't do the lesser, then you're not going to obey the greater. At that time, his voice shook the earth, but now he has promised, yet once more I will shake not only the earth, but also the heavens. This phrase, yet once more, indicates the removal of things that are shaken. That is, things that have been made, in order that the things that cannot be shaken may remain. Therefore, let us be grateful for receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken. Let's be grateful for receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken. And thus let us offer to God acceptable worship with reverence and awe, for our God is a consuming fire. That's the word of the Lord. And if you're Catholic, you'd say what? Thanks be God. All right, there you go. All right, so Hebrews 12:18. We're Protestant, by the way. 12:18 says, you have not come to a mountain that may be touched, for you have not come to what may be touched. Verse 22, these are verbs. But you have come to Mount Zion and to the city of the living God. So the author is referring to two mountains, Sinai and Zion, to contrast what it's like. One, to live under the old system, the old covenant, the law, and what it's like to live under or have the privilege of living under the new system, the new covenant, a covenant of grace. Let me read again, 18 through 21. For you have not come to what may be touched, a blazing fire of darkness and gloom and a tempest and the sound of a trumpet. The hearers begged that no further messages be spoken to them. Even Moses said, I trembled with fear. And the reason why you have not come to this and why it's so difficult and why he doesn't want you to come to it, because there's nothing that you can do to walk away and get God's good graces, because he has a standard, this law. The law couldn't do anything but make you feel like a failure. The law couldn't do anything else but make you notice your sin. The standard's way too high. You can't reach it. No one did reach it. So he's saying, like, the standard's too high. You're not coming to this mountain because you can't measure up at that mountain. So he said, here's the mountain that you get to approach. Here's what you get to approach. Not the terror of the old one. You get the joy of the new one. Remember, you've come to a mountain that has innumerable angels and festal gathering, joyful gathering. That means there's a party going on. You have come to a mountain that is hosting a party. There's a lot of joy here. And that's the mountain that you have come. Now, let's just be honest. It's like none of you guys got on your feet and we're clapping your hands and we're so excited that you're no longer under law. Right? No. In fact, some of y'all were like nodding, putting your head down. It's like no big deal. I watched you. It didn't hit. And the reason why it didn't hit, because we've always been under grace. Now, we may live like we're under law because we always live like, oh, God, I can't come to you because I failed you. That's living under law, right? Like, I didn't do what you wanted me to do, so you no longer want me. I can't come in unless I do a lot of penance, and then I can work my way back in. But we live like it. But we have never really experienced what it's like to the sacrificial system, dietary codes, all those things. So it's really hard for us to get excited about that we're under grace because we've always been under grace. Have you ever tried to explain to somebody what it was like back in the day that they've never experienced, and you expected them to be excited about it? They just couldn't understand because they've never experienced it. How can you really understand something that you've never experienced? I try it with my children. It don't work. It's hard for them to understand. I mean, how can my kids understand that Amazon Prime hasn't always been here? What's life without Amazon Prime? Yeah, they can't understand that. It's just that you get on there, you click, and it's here at the house tomorrow, right? You mean you went to a brick and mortar? It's hard to understand something that you haven't experienced, just like it's hard for us to get excited. You've heard, come on, if you've been in church, you've heard 100 times, you're not under law, you're under grace. And we sit there and like, don't move us. Well, it don't move us because we weren't under the system. You never approached a mountain where you were like fearful that you were going to die. You were asking Moses or asking someone, you speak to us. Don't let him speak to us. We're going to die. I mean, I have tried my best. I'll never try it again. Try to explain to my kids what it's like to not have a cell phone. There's no way for them not to know. Right? It's like, hey, Dad, I need a cell phone. You need a cell phone? Like you need a cell phone, like you need food, like you need a cell phone. It's like, yeah, I need a cell phone. It's like, you don't need a cell phone. I am the last person you want to argue with. Because I didn't have a cell phone. And I'm still here. And I'm okay. It's like, no, Dad, I need a cell phone. So then they're like, okay. I'm about to go dad on you. I'm going to give you the dad story. When I was 18 years old, I roll, womp, womp, womp. What are you talking about this? When I was 18 years old, I went to college in Dallas. Just for a short time, but I went to college in Dallas. And I drove by myself in a truck that could break down at any moment, any time. I drove 5 hours without a cell phone. So if I had a flat tire, I had to just man up, get it done. Flag somebody down, do something, take care of it. If I had some car trouble, I had to take care of it. There's no way they can understand because they've always had access to that. And well, you guys remember this, like you're on the side, you're on a road trip and you don't have a cell phone back in the day and you need to call somebody. What do? Hey, you stop at a payphone. Get as close as you can to it, roll down your window, reach out, drop the quarter in, call. It's just useless. Just save your breath. Don't even try it, right? Don't try to explain like it is. It's like, again, it's womp, 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 womp. Charlie Brown's talking, Charlie Brown. There you go again, Dad. And the problem is they're not concerned about breaking down. They're not about a flat tire. They're like, but Dad, 5 hours. What did you do for 5 hours? They're more concerned about entertainment. It's like, well, I was bored. Have you ever tried to be bored? It's good just to be bored because you get creative. You just think of things like you're waving at people you don't know. You're singing songs. You're thinking about things. But it's useless. Save your breath. It's useless to try to explain to someone. It's like electricity, right? And we have electricity and it's great, but we forget about how good it is until we lose it. And Southeast Texas, we know hurricanes. We know loss of electricity. Like you sleep in 82-degree weather. You're sticky. You're like, oh, I'm dying. Right? And the first moment that electricity comes on and you feel that cool air, you're like, thank you, God, for electricity. You're so grateful. And that's what I think the writer is trying to get here. It's like, I want you to have this. I am so grateful because I don't have to approach this mountain Sinai again. I get to approach Mount Zion. So the first section of our passage is about Mount Sinai. It's a historical event that they would have well been aware of. But then he's going to move on. But what he's doing is he's reminding them, and he's talking about an event that they know so well. God comes down to the top of a mountain. Remember, only God can come to the top of anything. Descends to the top, and that's where he meets with Moses. And the people get to see a demonstration, a manifestation of the power of who God is. Going back to Exodus 18. Now when all the people saw the thunder and the flashes of lightning and the sound of the trumpet and the mountain smoking, the people were afraid and they trembled. And they stood far off and said to Moses, "You speak to us and we will listen. But do not let God speak to us, lest we die." They didn't measure up. Moses said to the people, "Do not fear, for God has come to test you, that the fear of him may be before you, so that you may not what? Look, I'm going to come down. I'm going to give a demonstration of who I am to this group of people because I'm calling these people out and I want them to live for me. I want them to represent me. But I'm going to give them a demonstration of who I am through lightning, fire, smoke, quaking. I'm going to elicit awe in there to get their attention." But he's saying, you haven't come to that mountain. You haven't come to that. You're not coming to a mountain where you're not going to measure up. You're never going to measure up. You haven't come to a mountain where there's external forces that are going to get you to comply out of maybe fear, maybe out of awe. There's not you're not having this. It's like this: if you had a supervisor or a boss, maybe you've had two of them, and you had one that to get compliance, they raised their voice. They incited fear in you. You know, if you do that again, you may not be with this company much longer. Using all threats. And then you have another one that is more like, you know what? You messed up. I've messed up before. Let's just try to work this thing out. Let's see how you can do this better. And he says, you haven't come to a mountain that's using external forces to get your compliance. You've come to one where Jesus has taken the hit himself. Because just like a kid, if a child isn't changed on the heart, you may get outward compliance, and you may not get the heart. What do you want? You want the hand or the heart? It's like, you know, I am only obeying what you said, and I'm only pleasing you so I can behave. I can learn how to act so I don't get in trouble. And it's like this right here, like external forces can only take so far. External forces probably won't get your heart. It'll incite fear and keep you maybe straight for a little while, but it's not going to change the heart, because in chapter 32, 12 chapters later, what are they doing? They're back to building an idol. So it didn't work. It would be like we incite fear, and sometimes maybe you've come from a church background, and we've probably all heard those sermons where there was fear incited, and there's probably a proper dose of that to be given out at times. But if that's all you got, then maybe you were good till Wednesday. And then you're back to your old self. Because external motivation, what we want is the internal transformation, where the heart begins to change, and that's where we have the long obedience in the same direction. So he says in Hebrews 12:22, but you have come. This is what I want. It's like, people, this is what I want you to know. You have come to Mount Sinai. You have not to Sinai, but to Mount Zion, to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, to innumerable angels in festal gatherings. It's a party. To the assembly of the firstborn who are enrolled in heaven, and to God, the judge of all, to the spirits of the righteous made perfect. You have come to Jesus. It goes back to a familiar term that he's spoken so many times. The mediator of a new covenant. And to the sprinkled blood that speaks a better word than the blood of Abel. It's like, okay, there goes the references again, right? It's going back to the Old Testament, the most Old Testament of all New Testament books. He says, and you've come to this mountain of Jesus' blood that is a better, let me read it. And to the sprinkled blood that speaks a better word than the blood of Abel. You go, what does that mean? So Cain and Abel, brothers, first family. Abel offers a better sacrifice. Cain gets jealous, kills his brother for the first time. That's the first murder, by the way, first death, recorded death in the Bible. First time families coming together at the table and there's an empty chair. So Cain kills Abel. And it says that the blood of Abel is crying out for justice. Blood on the ground, crying out for justice. What's that? What would that look like? Cain should get what he deserves. Any of you want what you deserve? I don't. Cain gets what he deserves. I demand justice. That's what the blood of Abel is crying out. But it says, but you've come to a place, to a mountain where the sprinkled blood of Jesus speaks a better word than the blood of Abel. So what is the blood of Jesus crying out? Now, crying out justice. It's crying out mercy. It's a contrast. This is a contrast between the mountains. It's not crying out, you get what you deserve, because, no, none of us want what we deserve. It's crying out for mercy. What's mercy? You don't get what you deserve. But it even goes a step further beyond that. It's crying out for grace. And what's grace? Getting what you don't deserve. It's getting something good even though you don't deserve it. Y'all heard the acronym of grace? GRCE. God's riches. Anybody? Y'all haven't? Come on. What do you think the next one is? God's riches at Christ's expense. God's riches to you. God's riches to you. At the expense of Jesus. That's why his blood is better. So he's saying you have not come, but you have come. And that has deep religious meaning. Now, I didn't get this in the notes because I just ran across this a couple days ago. But where did I put this? To come. To come means literally to come facing towards, and so to approach something, to come near. It doesn't mean like I've come to you, like I've traveled a distance. It means an approach. I have come to you to talk to you. I've approached you. It describes the approach to, or the entry into a deity's presence. So, putting this together, you have not come to a mountain where you approach this deity to get acceptance through what you do. But you have come to Mount Zion where you can approach the deity, approach God based upon what he has done. And that's what he's saying, and none of us in here, I mean, we all have an approach. You have an approach, and I have an approach to how I try to get in the good graces of God. How do you make yourself feel good about yourself? How do you justify, although you have sinned, that God should let you in? That is your approach to a mountain. If you approach it Mount Zion, it is totally works. Okay, God, maybe I am on the naughty list, but I'm not on the top of the naughty list. I've done some bad things. I know that. I've done some sins. I've got some stuff I've got some dirt in my past. But I don't have as much dirt as when we find somebody else and it makes us feel better. I'm just saying, how do you approach it? How do you make yourself? Is there mind tricks that you play? Are there things that you say to yourself to make you feel like God is going to accept you? What you're about to go into like song before God in just a few moments. What's going to make you think that he's listening to you? Why would he listen to you? After all that you've done, I'm in there with you. At all the broken commitments, all the broken relationships, all the things, why do you think that he's even listening to your prayers? What convinces you? Like, what do you tell yourself that gets you in with God? Not only that, it's like, how do you even face life? How do you face the world? How do you deal with your past? What is your approach to God with that? What do you say to yourself in the mirror when you look in the mirror? Look in the mirror. Wow, did not know you had that much gray hair. When did that happen? You're getting a little pudgy. But just based upon significance and that you matter and that you have value. Like, what do you tell yourself? Why? If God called you to account for your life right now, how would you face that deity? And that's all this author is trying to do. So he's trying to say, thank God you have not come to the Mount Sinai. You've not come to this mountain where there is smoke, where there's fire, where he said, don't touch the mountain or you're going to die. Where you have approached this thing, where you know the bar has been set so high, and you know there's no possibility that you can even come close to that bar. Then you might as well just turn around and walk away. You say, that is not the mountain that you have come to. And here's how, I think this is how we do it. We should say, well, God, I tried my best. I have tried my best. And look here. Here's where I've excelled. And we pull out our resume. We'll say, well, look at all the good things I've done. We're going, achievements, career achievements, friendships, family, whatever that is. And, God, I know. And then we got to justify ourselves. God, I know the other night I drank a little too much. I know that. But that's an exception. That was an exception. That's not the expectation. That's just not how I roll. Yeah, God, I know the other night the passion got a little crazy. I got lost in it. We did something we shouldn't have done. But that's not what my intent was, God. And I'm just trying to work through these things, these justifications that we come to, that we try to get ourselves in with God to get us to accept. But what the author would be saying is that here you are trying to work and climb up Mount Sinai. You have not come to that mountain because the whole thing that I do my best is a farce. It doesn't work because you could give your best and your best will never be good enough. Absolutely not even close to the holiness of who God is. And we don't even live up to our own standards, much less God's standards. And I say that because if you ever want to know a definition of how you should treat anybody for the rest of your life, it's plain. It's Matthew 7:12. It's the golden rule. You ever wonder, how should I treat my boss? How should I treat my wife? How should I treat my children? How should I treat my in-laws? How should I treat whoever? It's always just ask yourself the question. Jesus gave it to us. How do I want to be treated? How do I want to treat and follow up? But here's the reality. How many of us can even do that? How many of us can even respond to people the way that we would hope that they would respond to us? How many of us even listen to people the way that when we're in trouble, we're talking, we want people to listen to us? I can't even live up to my own standards. And there's absolutely no way we can live up to the standards of the world. The shaky, the rocky, the here's the career achievements that you have to feel like you're valuable, your significance. Here's the look that you have to have. Here's the status that you have to have. We all we live this life of coming below standards that we don't measure up. And there's going to be a shaking. And there is a shaking. And what are we going to do when the shaking comes? There's an administrator for an elite university. He was talking about how the students that he has at this elite university, it's like the Harvards and Yales and those types, that the students that come, they've always made straight A's, like first grade on up. That's all they know. They're at the top of the class because they only accept the top. But now that you have all of this top of the class, this huge population, and they're the smartest of the smartest, now someone's going to be smarter. And because their identity has been in their whole life, the smartest of their class, now that they get among people that are smarter, there's a meltdown. Their whole identity is shaken. It's the world we live in, that the world sets standards that it's impossible to be able to hit. I've told you this before, but I truly mourn. And it makes me angry. And I'm not against social media. I'm on social media. I like social media. But to think of the effects of social media on my girls themselves, just take everybody else. It matters, but I'm just saying my children, to look and to compare, and that the world will set standards that we will never be able to hit, but those standards begin to determine our worth. And I want to say, you look and say, well, look at them, they have friends. And look where they're going, they're having fun. And they have an exciting life. And they're smart. And look at their grades. And look at their body. Look at their fit, their tone. They're attractive. They're whatever it is. And would cause there to be a pursuit that would change the identity of a person, a pursuit for things that will be shaken one day. And that cannot be stable for an individual. It pains me to be as a father and go, no, I'm your dad. I'm your dad. You're beautiful. You're whatever, smart. And by golly, people like you. You're okay. But it pains me. But that's it. It's the standard. It's like the world sets a standard of Sinai that is impossible to come to. And that when we can't reach it and we determine whether that's quotas at work, and I've got to admit it, I'm in the world with you too. I experience the same thing. I experience comparison of other pastors and other churches, just like you would have comparison of people in your industry or your friends or whatever. I mean, why is it that we would have a difficult time? Maybe you haven't experienced this, of celebrating with people who are experiencing successes. That someone is experiencing what we hope to experience, or they got the position or the job or the life that we had dreamed of, we see that they're getting it. It's hard for us to we want to, but there's nothing on the internal side that we can celebrate and party with them and truly be happy for them, because that's what we wanted. Why? Because there was a Sinai, there was a level of performance that I wanted to reach that I didn't reach, and now it is shaking me and making me feel like I'm less than. And he's saying there's an approach with God that way as well. And there's an approach with the world that way, that we approach as if, if we don't measure up, then the world's going to be shaken. And he's telling them, look, you've got 2 mountains to go up. Don't go up Mount Sinai. Go out Mount Zion, because this is how you can live an unshakable life in a world that's going to shake you. And you're going to be shaken. It's hard to be in the system and not be a part of it. So here's something that can be missed. Let me just start winding this down. In Hebrews 12:22 through 23, it says, but you have come to Mount Zion, to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, to innumerable angels and festal gatherings, and to the assembly of the firstborn. I know that sounds, we just don't get it that much. To the assembly of the firstborn who was enrolled in heaven. But here's what I want you to see. And to God, the judge of all. And to God, the judge of all. He said, that's the mountain you've come to. And to God, the judge of all. And we said, judge, isn't that what caused the fear in the first mountain? That he was the judge. He said, why would that be good news? It's because the shaking is God's judgment, and Jesus has taken the shaking for you. Matthew 27, now from the sixth hour, he took a shaking so your identity doesn't have to be in your output. Doesn't matter where you're at with your job right now, where you're at with your looks, where you think you are with your body image, with your new pursuit, with your future, your past, where you feel like maybe the past is limiting, the decisions you made in the past is limiting what you can do in the future. He's saying, no. Jesus took the shaking. Because from the 6th hour there was darkness over all the land until the 9th hour. And about the 9th hour, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is, my God, where'd you go? Are you there? Hello? Why did you forsake me? Some of the bystanders, they said, this man's calling Elijah, and one of them at once ran and took a sponge, filled it with sour wine, put it on a reed, and gave it to him to drink. But the others said, hold on, let's see where Elijah will come to save him. And Jesus cried out again with a loud voice, and he yielded up his spirit. And behold, the curtain of the temple was torn in two, from top to the bottom, and the earth shook. And the rocks were split. So here's what you got. 6th to 9th hour, there's darkness. I think a 6-inch curtain. I think that's what it was. Split from the very top to the bottom. He cries out, my God, why did you forsake me? And look what happens. The earth shakes. The rocks split. There's an earthquake. There's a shaking. It's Mount Sinai all over again. But it's with Jesus taking the shaking for you and for me. So that our identity is placed in His performance, not yours. whether you're proud of what you've done for your life or whether you're not. And some of you guys may say, you know what, I live a pretty moral life. I do pretty good. Then I would just call you out for pride right now. And say, hey, none of your works, none of our works. There's no ladder to climb that could get us to be acceptable to God. And this Mount Sinai, it's a shaking again, but this time Jesus is judged and he's shaken. He's getting what we deserve, and he's shaken so you don't have to be. Like C.S. Lewis, and we'll close with this quote. He says, apparently, then our lifelong nostalgia, our longing to be reunited with something in the universe from which we now feel cut off, to be on the outside of some door which we have always seen from the outside, is no mere neurotic fancy, but the truest index of our real situation. And to be at last summoned inside, who welcomed in, would be both glory and honor beyond all our merits, and also the healing of all that old ache. I just want to boil it down in maybe a couple minutes. Is look, every one of us face this thing where we don't feel like we're good enough. We have to fight that based upon performance or whatever that is. There's no way to reach the standards of the world. And if you did, the standards, it's going to change. And the author is just trying to say, here's what Jesus did. And I want you, if I could say, listen with virgin ears, maybe that would get your attention. With fresh ears. Or in a way to try to understand and appreciate one more time that God, creator of the world, speaker of everything, sent his son Jesus for the sole mission of bearing your failures and receiving your penalty so that you could have his righteousness, so that when you stand before God, it's not Mount Sinai. You can't come to him. God, I'm sorry this week, before I can start singing this worship song, I just need to be quiet and apologize 1,000 times. No. Say, come on. Come to Mount Zion. Come on. Get out of the performance game. Quit basing your worth on your looks. Quit letting your past stop you from what your future has for you. Come on, stay away from Sinai right now because there's something better. You have not come. You have come. It's all because of Jesus. He's given you an identity that when things are shaken, and things will be shaken, your hair may be messed up from it. It's going to be difficult. You may feel some pain. But at the end of the day, you're still going to be standing because your identity is placed in something that can be shaken. It already has been, and it survived the shaking. Amen?